Recursive notation. For these notes, we've got a cool picture by a sidewalk chalk artist, and he's literally covered the entire street with his sidewalk art that looks like the world is kind of in an apocalyptic kind of state. Here you can see some different manhole covers that he's left in place, but here you can see one that he's completely covered over. And these people are just standing on a regular street, reaching across like the world is falling beneath them. Recursive notation. Recursive notation is a formula that allows you to find the next term in a sequence. It's usually written with the words next and now. For example, next equals now plus 3, the first now equals 5. This allows us to not only figure out what the pattern is, but figure out where to start so we can get the exact same pattern every time. You will use this idea when you are given a sequence of numbers. We're going to start out by writing a rule for this pattern shown. We've got the pattern 2, 4, 8, 16. In order to write this pattern, we have to tell what we have to do to the number we have now, or that number 16, in order to get the number directly after it. So let's see, to get from 2 to 4, I can either think of adding 2 or multiplying by 2. So we can think add 2 or multiply by 2. Let's see if any of those work for the next phase. To get from 4 to 8, well, if I add 2, that gives me 6, so that doesn't work. But if I multiply by 2, that gives me 8. 8 times 2 is 16, so that is going to be my pattern. So my pattern is next equals now times 2. But if I just say next equals now times 2, that doesn't give me enough information. For example, I could have the pattern 1, 2, 4, 8, so on and so forth, and that would be taking the number we have now and multiplying by 2. But it's not the same pattern as what we have, because here I've started at 1 and my original pattern starts at 2. Same thing if I started, for example, with 3. I could have 3, 6, 12, 24, so on and so forth. Again, I'm still multiplying by 2 each time, but it's not the same pattern. So in order to know what the pattern is, I have to tell where to start. So I'm going to say that next equals now times 2. My first now, or the number that I'm starting with, is also 2 in this case. So my first now is 2. Next pattern, 9, 7, 5, 3. Try this one on your own. Pause your video at this point. You should have gotten next equals now minus 2. First now is 9. For this pattern, try this one on for size. Pause your video at this time. This one is next equals now times 5. First now equals 1. Did you get it right? This one's a little bit different. I've got a number that repeats itself. It's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on with this one. This one, I add 0. Then I add 1. I add another 1. I add 2. I add 3. So let's see, I add 0, 1, 1, 2, 3. This one's a little bit more challenging. For this pattern, we're going to have to employ a new vocab term. We're going to use the word previous, as in the one before. So for this one, to get the next number, I'm going to take the number that I have now plus the previous number. So let's see how that works. If I have, for example, if I'm starting at the number 2, 2 plus 1 gives me the next number, or 3. If I'm at 5, 5 plus 3 gives me 8. So to get to the next number, it'll be 8 plus 5, which is 13. Don't forget to remind the person looking what your starting point is. So our starting point in this case, or our first now, is going to be 1. Find the next two numbers and write a rule for the pattern shown here. 2, 5, 14, 41. Again, this one's a little bit more challenging. For this one, we're not just going to have one thing happening, we're going to have two. So let's look at how to get from one number to the next. From 2 to 5, we can add 3. From 5 to 14, we add 9. From 14 to 41, we add 27. Now let's look at how these terms relate. 3, 9, and 27. Well, to get from 3 to 9, I can multiply by 3. To get from 9 to 27, again, I can multiply by 3. So that's a really important key that we're going to have for this one. So sometimes if it's not obvious what's happening, look at the second level. The first level I had 3, 9, and 27 as my differences. The second level I could see that I just had to multiply by 3 to get to the next term. So in order to do this, the next number equals 3 times the number I have now, and we get that from this part right here where we could see the differences happening. In order to figure out how exactly we're going to do the second part, you have to try it out. So let's try 2. If I take 3 times 2, well, 3 times 2 is 6. How do we get from 6 to 5? Well, subtract 1. Let's see if that holds true. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 minus 1 is 14. 14 times 3 is 42. 42 minus 1 is 41. So that pattern's going to hold true. So next equals now minus 1. First now is 2. With that information, anyone can replicate our pattern. Using that same idea, try this one on your own. Pause your video and work through it. Did you get next equals now divided by 2 plus 2? First now equals 36? If you did, give yourself a big star. If you did not, see if you can figure out how I got my answer. You have 4 problems to try on your own tonight. Make sure you use the next now notation and tell what the first now is. See you tomorrow.